Hello children, welcome back to my channel. This is Manish Yadav, your English teacher. Today we are going to explain the remaining portion of Silk Road. This is very helpful for the students of class 11th. Let you go through the text. Half an hour later, let me erase the underlines first. Half an hour later. Sorry, above para has to be explained. I was served by a Chinese youth in military uniform who spread the grease around my table with a filthy rag before bringing me a glass and a thermos of tea. Narrator: he was served by a Chinese youth. He was a Chinese person and he was young, wearing military uniform, who sprayed the grease. It is a kind of cover which is used to spray it on the table. He spreaded the cover on the table with a filthy rag before bringing me a glass and thermos of tea. Afterward, he brought a glass as well as a thermos of tea. Half an hour later, Shaitan relieved me from my solitary confinement, and we drove past a lot more rocks and rubbish westwards out of town towards Mount Kailas. After half an hour, Satan relieved me from my solitary confinement. I was feeling better. Satan was relieving me, and we drove past a lot more rocks, and we have left a lot of rocks, in our past and rubbish. Now we were moving westwards out of town towards Mount Kailas. And from there, we were moving westwards, leaving the town towards Mount Kailash. My experience in Hor came as a stark contrast to accounts I had read of earlier travelers. First encounters with Lake Mansarovar. My experience in Hor. The narrator describes about his experiences in Hor. As you know, Hor is a place, and it came as a stark contrast to account I had read of earlier travelers. First encounters with Lake Mansarovar. They visit Lake Mansarovar first time, Ikai Kawaguchi, and he was, memorizing about Ikai Kawaguchi, a Japanese monk who had arrived there in 1900, was so moved by the sanctity of the lake that he burst into tears. He recalls about his earlier travelers, Ikai Kawaguchi. It is a Japanese monk who arrived there in 1900, and he was he was very affected by the sanctity, the holiness of the lake, that he burst into tears. And it was tears of pleasure, watching the beauty as well as holiness. Sanctity means holiness of that lake. A couple of years later, The hallowed waters had a similar effect on Sweyn Hedin, a Swede who was not prone to sentimental outburst. Another couple of years later, the hallowed waters had a similar effect on Sweyn Hedin. Another visitor went there like Mansarovar, and he was, feeling the same. He had same effect of that hallowed waters, and he could not help him not to be sentimental outbursts. And he felt the same as Ikai Kawaguchi felt being there. Next, it was dark by the time we finally left again, and after 10:30 p.m. we drew up outside a guest house in Darchen for what turned out to be another troubled night. It was dark by the time we finally left again, and after 10:30 p.m. we drew up outside a guest house in Darchen. When the narrator finally left again to drive further, it was 10:30 at that time. They drew up outside a guest house in Darchen, and there was a guest house in Darchen. There they drew up from for what turned out to be another troubled night, and it was another troubled night, worrying night for the narrator as well as Satan. Kicking around in the open air rubbish dump that passed for the town of Hor had set off my cold once more. And as we came outside, kicking around in the open air rubbish dump, it was an open elevation of the ground, and a lot of rubbish dump was there, and it passed for the town of Har had set off my cold once more. And I was feeling the same sensation, I was feeling cold. My nostril, it was taking the same effect as it had taken, in the past. And though, if truth be told, it had never quite disappeared with my herbal tea. And it could not be disappeared. Herbal tea could not help my cold to be disappeared. Means I could not help with the herbal tea. One of my nostrils was blocked again, and as I lay down to sleep, what was going on with narrator? When he was trying to get sleep, one of his nostril blocked. He could not breathe freely, and we could feel the same whenever we suffer from eosinophilia. Our one nostril, is blocked, and we inhale with the help of our another nostril, and sometimes we inhale through our mouth. So narrator says that one of his nostril was blocked again, and as he lay down to sleep, he was not convinced that the other would provide me with sufficient oxygen. He was breathing with the help of single nostril, and it was not feeling him comfortable to have sufficient amount of oxygen through single nostril. My watch told me I was at 4,760 meters above. It was not much higher than Rao. This time they were staying at the height of 4,760 meters above from the sea level, and that height was not higher than Rao. Rao was situated at more higher places than this, and there I had been gasping for oxygen several times every night. And in Rao, he was gasping, he was breathing heavily, hardly breathing to get sufficient oxygen several times. Every night it happens with him. I had grown accustomed to these nocturnal disturbances by now, but they still scared me. It was going on to be happen sometimes with me, but I was afraid of these problems still. I was scared of these problems still. It was terrifying me. And what happens next? Tired and hungry, I started breathing through my mouth. Finally, the narrator decides to breathe with the help of his mouth. As we know, it happens sometimes with us. Whenever we don't feel comfortable while we breathe through the nostrils, we open our mouth and breathe freely. It is cause of the blockage in our nostrils. What happens next? Let you know. Tired and hungry, I started breathing through my mouth. When he was tired, he was exhausted, and he was hungry. Finally, he decided to breathe through his mouth. After a while, I switched to single nostril power, which seemed to be admitting enough oxygen. But just as I was drifting off, I woke up abruptly. The narrator switched to single nostril power, which seemed to be admitting enough oxygen. He was taking enough oxygen with the help of his one nostril, but as he was trying to get slept, he woke up abruptly, he woke up suddenly. He could not sleep, or he was sleeping hardly. I mean to say that the narrator was not feeling comfortable during sleep. He could not sleep comfortably. Something went wrongly with him. Something was wrong. According to the narrator, Nick Middleton, he says that something was wrong. There was something which was not suitable, and I was not feeling comfortable. What happens next? My chest felt. How does he feel with his chest? Let you know. It's strangely heavy. His chest felt strangely heavy. He was feeling heaviness in his chest. Means he could not breathe freely through his both nostrils. He was not getting proper and enough oxygen, so that it was causing heaviness in his chest. And he sat up. Narrator Nick Middleton, he sat up abruptly. A moment that cleared my nasal passages almost instantly and relieved the feeling in my chest. Curious, I thought. But after some moment, it was cleared. The nasal passages. He was feeling better because he could breathe freely after a moment. And the moment he felt better, it seemed instantly that he was getting relieved, with the feeling in his chest. And he was feeling better with his chest as well as breathing. Now, this moment, he felt very curious that what is going on with me? It is very strange to me. Next, Nick Middleton says that I lay back down and tried again to have a nap for sort of time. Same result. Again, narrator tried to sleep, but same result was there. He could not sleep this time also. I was on the point of disappearing into the land of Nod when something told me not to. And I thought of a point disappearing into the land of Nod when something told me not to. I thought about strange and what is going on with me. I was very shocked because it was happening first time with me, where I could not breathe freely. I could not have a short nap for short time. It must have been those emergencies, electrical pulses, impulses again. And he thought about some short circuits, emergency electrical impulses again in his body. Within his body, there was something wrong. But this was not the same as on previous occasion. But it was different than previous occasion. He was not feeling the same as he felt previously. This time, what was going on? This time, I was not gasping for breath. Only the matter or the thing of comfortable, he was not gasping for breath. Means he could breathe freely this time. I was simply not allowed to go to sleep. But the problem was only that he could not sleep. He could breathe freely this time, but he could not sleep anymore. This was the problem. Sitting up once more immediately made me feel better. I could breathe freely and my chest felt fine. But as soon as I lay down, my sinus failed and my chest was out. It is, the same problem. Again, what happens? When he sit up once more immediately, it made him to feel better. When he was sitting, he was in the position of sitting, he was feeling better. But when he was trying to sleep, same problem was going on. And he could breathe freely and my chest felt fine. Means when the narrator was in the sitting position, his chest was feeling better and he could breathe freely. But as soon as he lays down, my sinus filled and my chest was out. Again the same problem, same thing, same sensation. He was feeling the same as he felt previously. What happens next? Let me scroll down the page. And before going further, let me erase the underlines. Dear students, what happens next? Let you know. Sitting up once more immediately made me feel better. I could breathe freely and my chest felt fine. But as soon as possible, as I lay down, my sinus filled, my chest was out. As I have explained these lines, I tried propping myself upright against the wall. Now this time the narrator tried to have a short nap supporting on the wall. But now I could not manage to relax enough to drop off. But he could not manage enough to get sleep, to have a nap for a short time. He could not put his finger on the reasons, but he was afraid to go to sleep. He could not realize and analyze the problem. What is going on? What is the exact reason and problem so that I could not sleep? But he was afraid to go to sleep. He could not, or he was hardly sleeping. He could not sleep. A little voice inside me was saying that if I did, I might never wake up again. So I stayed awake all night. And there was a horrible voice coming inside me that if I did might never wake up again, if forcibly I make me to sleep, I would never wake up again. So, scaring of this problem, he stayed awake all night. He could not sleep for a single nap, a single time, freely over there. So, up to this paragraph, narrator Nick Middleton describes what happens with him when he arrived in Darchen, and that place was, lower. It was not at the same height as the Rao was situated. So he describes about his experiences, how he felt to be there. He was afraid of, death, because everything was going on strangely with him, and he could not have a short nap or short time. So he decided to stay awake all night over there. That's it for this video. Keep learning.